重的地震，汤方，重的地震，汤方。哦，你哪家里？我的车在这边。
Please don't fall over.
Yes, as you can see from that video from my living room, Taiwan has been struck with a rather large earthquake all the way over in Hualien on the other side of the country. Not that that means that it wasn't big here. Taiwan is a small country and we definitely felt it here. It was a 7.4 earthquake over in Hualien. And just to give you some context, to help you understand what that feels like, a 2.0 earthquake is considered a very minor earthquake. You might not even feel it, minor shaking. Not a whole lot happens, not a big deal. If we go all the way up to a 5.0 earthquake, that's considered a moderate earthquake with moderate shaking. Things might fall off your shelves, might have a harder time standing up. Still not a huge deal. There might be some minor structural damage and some disruption to utilities, but not a big deal. But today was a 7.4, which is considered a major earthquake. That can cause major shaking, major structural damage. They can also cause things like tsunamis and landslides and that kind of thing, which we did get a presidential warning about. These earthquakes are a lot bigger and a lot more serious of a threat. Over here in Taichung, I think it was only about a 4. It was still violent enough to do this much shaking in my building. And so Taichung, as you can see around me, is fine. It's a holiday right now, but for people who still have to work, they're still out working, going about their day. People are walking and just kind of enjoying their time. And that for me is kind of the main story for today. I mean, this earthquake was big, don't get me wrong, but what I find interesting about this is just how resilient Taiwanese people are and how little they panic when something like this happens.
地震的时候你感觉如何？
就是觉得我比较没有很害怕，我比较喜欢那种刺激的体验，所以我觉得这对我来说，可能一开始有吓到，但是后来就是觉得其实还好，因为我觉得就那样，
一直想要跑出去，
跑出去，害怕吗？
会有，
有，
因为平时的地震摇一下，台中的地震大概3级，大约啦啊，很小，那我们就坐在那边，地震来了，就停了，然后报道的时候说花莲那边会传过来。
对，
大概5级，传到台中来就3级了，不容易感觉到。
一开始当然是有点紧张，但是后来就觉得好像就是平常会遇到的地震这样子。对，因为台湾还蛮常地震的。
你觉得台湾人对地震有充足的准备吗？
应该说从小到大，因为我们在地震带上。所以我们学校就会有灌输一些理念，就是要做好，就是比如说急救包那些，可能就家里都会有备一个急救包，所以一发生地震，然后知道先做什么预防措施，像是要去梁柱下面去躲，或者是把门打开，那些基本做了之后，等到地震摇晃完，然后就拿着那个包就走。但是因为今天我那时候刚好要出门上班，所以就是评估完觉得应该没事，所以就直接出门，就是到空旷地方避难。所以我觉得台湾在地震教育方面算是做得蛮足够的，应该正常，每个家人应该都会有一个包包去做紧急的状况做使用。
所以你今天要上班吗？
对啊，我们现在在上班。
哇，
对啊，
好。
我觉得都有因为。例如说10几年前有很严重的921大地震，在那之后呢，其实台湾对于这种高楼的那种防震，还有它的结构都是有在加强的。但是现在因为台湾也太常发生地震，所以说一般民众还是可能会觉得说就是地震，那地震来了就这样吧。所以说一般民众的准备有没有那么充足，可能不太一定这样子。
我看没有，
就想说这个地震不会影响到我们，说很大啦。都是别的地方啊，譬如说水灾那些啊，都是别的地方发生比较严重的我们这个台中都很平稳。
你记得921地震吗？还是你
我没有经历
过？你太年轻的。
对，我刚好在地震的隔1年才出生，所以我没有经历到。
921有
经过，
我有经过， 我在睡觉的时候被它一震醒来了，本来都不想跑，但是那个太大了，
太大了，对。
赶快下来跑出来，整条路都是人。
Because I think if this earthquake of this scale happened, anywhere else in the world, you would probably have a lot more panic and probably a lot more people talking about it. And that's why a lot of news agencies across the world are actually covering this earthquake because it was so big. In fact, about an hour ago, I had an interview with some American news lady from the Bay Area. I don't know what that means, I'm not American.
To the west of the epicenter, a man living in Taichung City captured this video inside his apartment.
But this one was by far the biggest one, the most violent one. Seeing how the locals react to it made me feel a lot more comfortable. A lot of people just sort of walked out of their buildings and checked on their neighbors and made sure everyone was okay, and that kind of made me feel a lot more calm.
But what I found interesting is that when it happened, I went onto my balcony, which you shouldn't do, but I just wanted to see the reaction, and all I saw were kind of elderly people walking out of their buildings, checking on each other, but there was no running, there was no screaming, there was no, panicking or anything like that. Of course, there were some dogs barking and some other animals kind of freaking out a bit, but for the most part, people were not panicking at all. And I found that very, very interesting. This earthquake just happened this morning, so I don't know exactly the full extent of the damage, but it does look like a few buildings fell over. There's a video of people on a bridge, and you can just see it's like a suspension bridge or something like that, and you can see the bridge is just shaking so violently, and people are having a really hard time keeping their scooters upright. And in fact, my friend Alan, who you guys all know from life in Taiwan, was out having his morning walk around the park, and he also had a hard time standing up.
Huge shaking, the ground was like displacing by, without sounding dramatic, I would say like a good 6 inches right to left, which is enough to really throw you off balance. And then turned around and there was an older gentleman, OAP, walking behind me, and he looked at me like with big wide eyes like, "Dizene," like earthquake. And I was like, yeah, that was a big one. It was like, "Henta, henta." And then my phone basically blew up with people asking me, "Are you okay? What's going on?" And everyone was taking care of each other. You send messages to your friends. We messaged our group chat, of which Prozzy was already awake. He'd been shaken out of bed. Andre, for some reason, didn't reply for about another 4 hours. He had a good sleep in, slept through a 7.4 earthquake.
For the most part, for earthquakes, if you're in a building, you'll definitely feel it a lot more because the building shakes, or if it's a smaller earthquake, it'll just kind of sway back and forth and you can feel it. It's a very terrifying experience, especially when you're really high up. But when you're on the ground, typically speaking, you don't feel earthquakes. But this one was so big that even when you're on the ground, you definitely feel it. And that's just like another level of terrifying. I think one of the reasons you don't see people panicking or losing their minds or even disrupting their day, like people are still going to work after an earthquake this big, is because Taiwanese people are simply used to it. Earthquakes happen here fairly frequently, although more often not, they happen on the East Coast over in Hualien, where this one happened as well. But like I said, because Taiwan is so small, you tend to feel them all over the island. And today was no different. It was a big, big, big boy earthquake. And so people are used to it. And I feel like that's part of the character of the Taiwanese. It's something that's very interesting about them, is that the sort of lack of public panic and this incredible sense of public order. There's no running, there's no screaming. People just simply calmly walk down the stairs to the safety of the outdoors, or they straight up just don't. My friends Kat and Greg are visiting Taiwan all the way from Canada, and they're staying at a hotel all the way in in Yilan. And they were saying how they were the only people in the hotel that seemed to be shocked about this massive earthquake that struck. No one else was really batting an eye. And that just again, shows the character of the Taiwanese, how they just don't have a panic about anything. I mean, we get presidential earthquakes fairly frequently, tsunami warnings from the president somewhat frequently. I shouldn't say frequent, but more frequent than you otherwise would expect. And a few months ago, we had a presidential warning about a missile flying over the country from China. And so these things happen and people are used to it, and they just kind of keep their heads calm and cool and collected, and I find that very interesting and kind of respectable. The other interesting thing I noticed is, like, back when I lived in China, I worked at an international school and we used to do fire drills, and we had to teach the locals there not to run out of the building, because the general idea in China is that there's so many people in a school, because the population's so high, right? So there's gonna be a lot of students, is that when there's a fire drill or a fire alarm or an actual fire, the idea is run as fast as you can out of that building. The problem with that, obviously, is it causes mass panic and people get stuck outside the school doors and they're unable to get out. But here it's not like that. Everyone was very calm, very collected. And I found it interesting, and I just wanted to share this quick video with you guys. I'm safe. Taichung seems fine. I hope everyone else out there is okay. With that, stay positive, keep your stick on the ice, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.
是哪一国？
我是加拿大人。
哦，加拿大。
对对对。
I have been in your country。
哦，真的吗？你出过吗？
有，我去了2次哦。
2次。
一次在那个奥运体育馆的那个城市叫蒙托罗。
蒙托罗。哦，他们说法语吗？
对，法语。哦。那个说 Bonjour。Bonjour，
对。哇，你的法文很好听。对，好 ，OK， 好，谢谢你们，谢谢。